Do. Preparing to live stream the meeting. Your meeting is now live on YouTube. It's funny. I've been doing these conversations on Group Tarot's YouTube channel for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And usually, or I guess it started last month's conversation or the one before. It stopped giving the auditory, this meeting is being live streamed. And
Oh,
I don't know,
interesting.
yeah, and I don't know why it stopped doing the auditory thing, because, you know, that's important for some, that's important
hmm
for some access. Which hopefully now for those watching live, the closed captioning on Zoom is also up. I apologize. I forgot to turn that on last time for our deaf and hard of hearing viewers. I apologize that the access was not there right at the beginning, right at the get-go. Um, Give me a moment while I pull up YouTube on my phone so that I can monitor your questions that you type in live with this fantastic conversation with Sarah Greenman that I am so excited for. Sarah Greenman is a phenomenal artist and creator who I was introduced to through our mutual friend Nicole Lane. And I think I joined your mailing list probably 2 or 3 years ago.
2+ years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first time we actually met was in one of your online painting
I did like an
opening.
open studio or something and you came. It
Yes,
was wonderful. Yeah.
yes. And I just knew Nicole had made such a good connection. I was like,
She's a people connector.
oh my
There's
gosh.
some people that are just really good at weaving the right personalities together at the right moment. She's one of them.
Yes, 100%.
Hmm.
And so when you came out with your book, Creative Alchemy Cycle, I was so thrilled to uh, be one of your advanced readers. And
Thank
I'm,
you for doing that. It's a big deal to have advanced readers take a look at your work and share back with me. So thank you.
you're so welcome. You're so, so welcome. Especially, I was especially touched that I was one of the people you reached out to and said yes to, because we don't actually know each other that
Not
well.
very well. No, but
Yeah,
I follow your work.
yeah.
I stalk you online. So
We have that back and forth
mutual online stalking, is that a
mutual
thing?
online
Thing?
stalking. Exactly. So when I was reading Creative Alchemy Cycle, I I've been a witch for a very long time, and it interested me that you were beginning your cycle with Imbolc. And
Mhm.
so I was like, oh, maybe we can
February.
chat in February. So
Perfect.
here we are. And what was it? Because a lot of times witches, obviously witches and paganism were not a monolith, and many traditions see Samhain, Halloween as the new year. Some see the winter solstice and the return of lengthening days as a new year. What was it that wanted that what how did you choose to begin your cycle at Imbolc?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about the Gregorian calendar that starts us in January, which I don't ascribe to, but I do know that that's when a lot of people begin internal work.
Mm,
And it's also Lunar New Year at the end of January, beginning of February. So that's another, it's not my tradition, but that Chinese Lunar New Year is potent.
mhm.
And that's a beginning of sorts. And I loved Imbolc as a beginning. It's St. Bridget's Day, and she's a birther. She's there to help the bards and brewers and birthers bring forth their their new life, their new project, their new idea, their new sense of self. And so I thought beginning with St. Bridget was a really great way to begin. That was sort of my thinking on that.
Mm, yes. Have you had a chance to go over to Ireland to any of her sacred wells and sacred
Oh
fires?
yeah, it's it was definitely a pilgrimage I wanted to make early in my life, and I went twice. I went when I was in high school, and then again when I was 19. So really close to 2 or 3 years apart. Went back.
Was
Uh,
it was it before or after they had relit her sacred fire?
it
Because I
was
remember,
after.
oh,
Yeah, that was
nice.
after.
Nice. I have yet to get over to see the sacred fires. I have been over and been to her sacred well to two or three of her sacred wells so far, but I have yet to get
Okay.
over to the fires. Uh,
Yeah.
when I'd love to hear a bit about your creative process in
Sure.
bringing your book together, and how, because I really, one of the things that I really love is that I I remember early on in my artist and theater days, sometime in high school, someone gave me the artist's way,
Oh
and
yeah, the
I
Julia
did.
Cameron work.
And I thought it was very lovely, but it did not click or resonate with me.
Mm.
I think I probably still have it in with all of my like year journals that I did something else with. Um,
Sure.
and what I love about Creative Alchemy Cycle is that it feels like this marvelous merging of the artist's way and creating your own personal wheel of the year, because so much of it is about being in community and conversation with your land, with your
Yeah.
place. So
Yeah.
in for me, I'm doing things a little out of order in the prompts in your book, but
Oh,
I
good. It's meant to be used as you need, you know? You can pick
really,
up anywhere.
and you did such a great job of having all of those invitations through. I think,
Hmm.
oh, this is it. I give you permission, because I am very circuitous in coming to a point. If you hear a thread that you want to answer, please cut me off and jump
Okay.
in,
I'll
because
grab it.
grab it.
I
Yes,
will.
please
I
grab it.
will.
I should give all of my guests that warning. Uh,
You
the
think multilaterally, so we'll follow your lead. I love it.
You have a phrase in there, and I don't have a hard copy of the book to reference. I only have I have a PDF version, and I don't want to flip between screens. So we're working from memory.
Yeah.
The embracing amateurism. Am I remembering that
Oh
correctly?
yeah. I'm happy to read from that section too, if you'd
Oh,
like.
please. I would love that.
Yeah, I was it's called In Praise of Amateurism. And it's a section on right at the beginning of the book about creativity. I just want to, at the very beginning, sort of understand what I mean when I say creativity. And so I have this section called In Praise of Amateurism. Amateur is one of my favorite words. Unfortunately, it's taken on a negative connotation in the past century, often used as a pejorative for someone who is inept or unskilled. And I'd like to reclaim the word amateur, or re-endow it with its original meaning. Amateur has various root meanings. In Latin, it stems from amare, which means to love. In French, it means lover of. And there's also a case to be made for the Sanskrit word amiti, which means to take hold of, to grasp, or to understand. So to be an amateur means to take hold of or understand something you love. How beautiful. Then I go on to talk about this wonderful woman who was, her name was Kaya Monroe, and she was playing Mrs. Cratchit at a party. I was at the Jiva Theater Center working on A Christmas Carol, and she and the company, the cast, were all together for Thanksgiving and Christmas because we were working over the holiday. And for our Thanksgiving feast, she pulled out this really old beat up case, and inside of it was a saxophone. And she threw it together and said, I'm going to play for you all, and I'm an amateur. And it's my gift to you. And I love the saxophone, but I don't play it. I'm not in the Philharmonic, but I would like to play. And she played Oh Holy Night for us on the saxophone while we all just sort of remembered why we loved the arts in the first place, which was because we got to take hold of something we wanted to understand about ourselves and just enjoy it for the sheer joy and pleasure of it. And that it doesn't have to turn into a side hustle or a gig or something. It can just be something we deeply love that we notice about how we express and how
Mm-hmm.
we understand ourselves. So I am all about reclaiming the word amateur.
And at least for me, and hopefully for our watchers and our listeners and our readers, you did, because so after reading Creative Alchemy Cycle, and I do this with most things. I'm the kid who, when I have a plate of food in front of me, I put a little bit of everything on my fork because I want all of the flavors.
Well, the bite. You want the perfect bite.
I want the perfect bite. And so I kind of did something different. I kind of did something similar with your book,
Mm.
rather than uh, taking the prompts, the beautiful artistic prompts that you give with each chapter. I realized that uh, where my own curiosity was piqued on my land, Multnomah, Chinook, Warm Springs land, which, for watchers, if you want to help Indigenous tribes in your area, listen to what they need wherever you are. Where I am, Chinook justice is a big thing right now. We're working to get the Chinook tribe federally recognized
Recognized, yeah.
again. And so you can follow them on chinookjustice.com and hashtag Chinook Justice. Um, and I realized I have these two volunteer oak trees in my front yard. Thank you, squirrels. And I have long noticed that they hold on to their leaves much longer than I think they should. Although I am not an arborist, so I don't actually know when the oak trees are supposed to drop their leaves. And so, with that, like, natural curiosity of my literal
Yeah.
land, and your prompt of watching one particular place for extended times,
Yeah.
I am combining that invitation of yours along with your sketching invitation, because I do enjoy being a complete rank amateur drawer. And
I
so
love it. You've got
I'm
botanical sketches. That's
I'm
perfect.
to try and to notice and be in conversation more with my oak trees of what their growing and dropping cycle is. And you talk so much in Creative Alchemy Cycle about your relationship with your land, and I'm curious about, when did having those conversations with the land start for you?
Mm.
Did it start when you moved to Oregon, or did you also have that kind of sense earlier in your life?
I did earlier. And I'll say, I mean, this relates to your first question about how did I take my creative process and share it in this particular way. My way of working has always been to follow the seasons. I think that the nature, the sort of like the natural rhythms of Earth are a really good indicator of how we should probably be behaving. And that we can sort of the biomimicry is important. It says to the self, hey, I'm bearing witness and I'm noticing what's happening around me and I can mirror that back. It's a way of loving. That's how one of the ways we love each other and show that we're listening is we mimic those around us. And so, yeah, it was also an antidote to grind culture, frankly. There's that wonderful quote from Rumi, nothing blooms all year, I think. And I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that I was taking the time that the earth was inviting me to take, which was to winter. Was that wonderful book, Wintering, by Catherine. Oh God, I'm losing her name right now. But this idea that when the earth sleeps, you can sleep. And when the earth wakes up, it's a great time to wake up. And when it flourishes, it's a wonderful time to give forth your gifts into the world and to join the bird song. And then when things start to decay, it's okay to feel like you're losing something or that you're changing. And so I love the idea of watching a single tree through a season. Of course, that's a beautiful sort of micro moment where you're with a co-creator, but also to notice the world around you. The other thing is, we all have internal landscapes, right? I come from the central coast of California in terms of my childhood upbringing. And so my internal landscape is a seascape, is an oceanscape. You may have a different one. You might be a desert person or a mountain person or a river person. And so we carry those internal landscapes inside of us. So we are mirroring not only the one we're in on the land in which we're a guest and where we call home, over the course of our lives, which can change, but also we carry internal landscapes about our upbringing, or when sort of key moments in our life have occurred, we often remember where we were and what we were noticing about those spaces. So this is an external exploration of nature and its rhythms, but also an internal exploration of our own rhythms and how they mirror or don't mirror the cycle. I asked a group the other day, we were talking about wintering and sort of the quietude and creative incubation that happens in winter. And somebody said, I think I'm having a summer season in winter. And I thought, you know what? That's beautiful. You can also have a kind of summer of the heart or a summer of your creativity in odd times during the year. But it's great to notice that and think, okay, I'm I have a different rhythm happening inside of me right now that might be not in sync with nature, but might be beneficial to or in collaboration with what's happening now. So
Or, or in counterpoint.
yeah, counterpoint. Hmm.
Yeah. I with your in similar to your friend who had the I'm having a summering
I'm
moment
having a
in
creative summer.
winter. I will frequently have wintering moments in summer,
Yeah.
especially depending on where how hot it gets places.
Yeah.
I am not even though I have a love and respect of the desert and have people and community down in New Mexico, um,
Yeah, me too.
Albuquerque, known lands, Zuni, Jicarilla, Apache. Um, I am not a desert person. I love and respect it. Makes me very, very grateful for the waters, even more so. But I shut down. Like my body shuts down a little bit when it gets too hot, and so I'm like, nope. I'm taking some wintering time. I'm going to have long stretches where I have minimal things to do and have good rest
That's
and
why I so respect people that are desert witches or are summer people or who work with landscapes that I don't have a lived experience of. And it informs who they are, how they think, and the kind of medicine that they offer the world. And so there's a deep beauty And not only that, but when we think about the ecological impact of our work, like we need desert people and we need, uh, I think about it in terms of our ecological disasters too, right? There's hurricane people and fire people and tsunami people, and they understand the sort of texture of their weather and its power. And they know what to do because they have a lived experience of it. And the more variety that we have, the better off we are.
Yeah.
That kind of diversity is craved by the earth.
Oh, so craved.
Yeah.
So craved by the earth. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. I was facilitating the tarot show for a group of tarotists in the very first StaarCon, and we were completely virtual at that point.
Mm.
And at the beginning of all of my group tarot sessions and the tarot show, we have a moment where we really ground into the earth. We really give thanks and gratitude to the place and the complex stories of the land and home and housing that we are being supported by. And in doing that in an online capacity, that means that people are zooming in from all parts of this good earth, our only home, that have huge complex relationships with colonialism, with land, with what it is to be fully indigenous and like still have that, like all of those things can happen in one session in one Zoom room. And not and it was and I'd love to hear how your interactions with folks are similar or different. But for me, I forget that not everybody looks at the land in terms of relationship.
Yeah, they don't.
And so I received feedback from that very first tarot show for StaarCon that it was the first time this particular individual had ever really felt into her land
Yeah.
and and had a lot of feelings of overwhelm and the stories that the land was telling her. And so I did my best to help her ground and come into and like tools, art and such to work with and digest that.
Yeah.
what what have your experiences been in fostering doulaing people to have a conversation with the place that they are and the land that they are, when that is new to them, when that's not part of their cultural experience, their spiritual experience? Is that part of why you wrote Creative
Yeah.
Alchemy Cycle? Like,
Absolutely. I think it's chapter 8. I have the Harvest Festival, Lunasa, which in Celtic culture is the first harvest. And it's a great time of year to mirror what's happening with Earth, which is we're reaping the rewards of our seed work, and we have abundance and we share it and we redistribute wealth and we think about what right relationship with land looks like. And so in that chapter, it's an accountability practice. And that's a really important piece of my creative process. And I mean, this whole book is a invitation to call you into right relationship with land, people, and animals and minerals and what I think our US government, thinks of as like resources. And so uh, actually, there's a section. Can I read a section from the
please.
book about this? Yeah, it's a It's a short story. I begin every single chapter with kind of a homily. A homily is a religious term for a short story that calls people to think about their relationship with the spirit, or land or something else. And so they're like short memoir stories that are about each season. And so this is from the one at Lunasa at Harvest. It's the first day of August, and I was deadheading in my mother's flower garden. She would have done it herself, but after 40 plus years on her feet as a hairdresser, arthritis had overwhelmed her hands and lower back this year. She couldn't squeeze the shears anymore. But she loved her flowers, and I welcomed the opportunity to spend a little time in her garden. I talked to the seed pods and sang little prayers of gratitude as I pruned. The hollow stems of allium and poppy snapped off easily, while the hollyhock and rudbeckia required the snippers. The wild arms of the Russian sage were still going strong, so I left them alone. A husky, orange-bottomed bumblebee landed on one of its thin purple limbs, and it bowed down in supplication under the weight. Even the Russian sage has found a way to kneel and kiss the ground. That day, kneeling in my mother's garden, looking around at the flowers and the farmhouse and the hayfields beyond, I was filled with a complex sense of gratitude, and I was thankful for our home, which shelters our dreaming and our safety. And I was thankful for the soil under my fingernails and the cottonwoods along the creek and the water that rolled through the valley and gave life to everything. But I was also recognizing a deeper sense of responsibility for its health and its longevity. Underscoring this immense feeling of home and stewardship was the knowledge that I am a settler here. Wherever I lay my head, I am on Indigenous land. Do you know where your people are from and how it is that you've come to this moment? Do you know your history? If we are to live and work and create in right relationship, we must know ourselves and the legacies to which we are connected. To engage in culture shift requires that we first understand the cultures that made us. I come from Celtic people who emigrated to the US during the clearances in Scotland and from the famines in Ireland. In my matrilineal line, many of my people spent their lives working as day laborers and migrant farmhands throughout the country, Minnesota, Nebraska, Kansas, Wyoming. They even made it to southern Canada during the Dust Bowl. And in my patrilineal line, we worked as stonemasons and laundresses in the East, building the cities of Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. My people have been outsiders, or may have been outsiders upon arrival, but as our young country grew into its adolescence, my immigrant ancestors were soon absorbed into a culture of whiteness that rewarded their assimilation and their obedience. And some of those rewards came in the form of access to real estate. This farmhouse stood empty for almost 5 years before my mom and her late husband decided to make it their home. The house was in terrible shape and needed long-term attention and rehabilitation. And I share this with you because in its current state, after decades of hard work and sweat equity, this home is its own kind of harvest for our family. We brought our babies into the world here, and we've buried our dead here. And while this place is a culmination of our family's generational work and fortitude, our ability to buy property at all in the past 3 generations is largely due to bank practices that made home loans available to white soldiers and working class families. These opportunities were specifically withheld from Black families. And if we were to spiral back even further, we'd see that this fertile valley was home to a multitude of native tribes like the Nimipu, Cayuse, Walla Walla, and others, many, many others. And part of my work to be in right relationship with this land is not only to honor the sovereignty and wisdom of those people, but to unlearn the devastating tools of their colonizers from which I personally descend. And contextualizing the story of our home helps me own the truth of my family's assimilation and our participation in settler colonialism. And as I deepen into a reparatory relationship with this land, I continue to ask, what is mine to do in healing the harm? So I share that with folks to say, what do you know about yourself? What do you know about where you come from? And what's the reality of the fact of you being where you are right now? And so it's not a fix, right? It's not to know for knowing's sake. It's that Maya Angelou quote of like, now that you know, better, you're going to do better. And I'm interested in knowing better so that we can do better. And weaving that kind of self-awareness is a first step. And the second is analysis, right? I want us to sort of have some real analysis about our presence and our ability to make a life anywhere on this good green earth. And so my call is always about that invitation back to right relationship and repair and to self-knowing, and not to like help anybody, but to help yourself get right with the land and the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's definitely a huge part of this book. The chapter before is about activism and how to infuse our activist life and creativity with that kind of inquiry to right relationship. But when we take action, we are going to make mistakes. And there's a kind of magic in mistakes, but we can't be afraid to make them. Now, harm is a mistake is one thing, harm is another. And so learning to be in a state of repair, not to say, well, if I make a mistake, you're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. We have to be a society that can call itself back into right relationship and repair. And I think we can do a lot of that through our creative work. And so that's a big invitation sort of in the center of this book. One of many.
One of many,
One of many.
and one of my favorites, truly, because I even before I knew about reclaiming tradition, even before I was a witch, I was a performer with an ensemble in New York called City Kids Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And it was and still is all about youth empowerment and social justice and all of the intersectional works. It was the first place that I was comfortable coming out as queer. It was where I viscerally learned how my whiteness shielded me, because I
Mm-hmm.
was one of the only white people in the ensemble. And so when we would have our community gatherings outside of rehearsals, and we would have our talking circles and sharing, the stories that I would be hearing were so vastly different from my own experiences. And it, even though I didn't have the language of racial profiling and targeting and things like that as a teenager, I was able to start seeing what those patterns
Yeah.
were, and realizing that, oh, I there are ways that I can disrupt these
Yeah.
systems. There are
Yeah.
ways that I can, just by speaking up, just by saying something, just by calling something out or calling something in the circles that I move in my other day-to-day lives, which are very different, that there's that that awareness and then analysis of, oh, here are how situations are different, can then lead into feeling that sense of empowerment despite fear, to
Yeah.
speak up, to change things, to work to be in relationship, and of course stay away uh from being the white knight, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the,
That's the savior is a piece that, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's what this book, there are 8 cycles, right? There are 8 holidays throughout the year, starting with Imbolc. And they are the cross quarters outside of the solstices and equinoxes. Those are harvest festivals in the Celtic culture. And then of course the solar events, those equinoxes and solstices. And each chapter has sort of a practice. And we start with a journal practice and a sketchbook practice, but we move quickly into an embodiment practice and an activist practice, accountability practice, which is what I was just reading from, and then a gratitude practice and a grief practice around Samhain, and then a joy practice. And I find those 8 things to be just really crucial in understanding how to be a whole person and show up whole and to deliver your gifts into the world in right relationship, right? To sort of hit the right moment at the right time and to know what that even would look like or feel like. I think we're so separate from our natural gifts,
Mm.
what we know. I just don't think we really give credit to what we actually know. And so this book is definitely like, if it's a maple tree, like that's the tap that's in the bark. Like I'm trying to like get that sugar out. And so this book is meant to be fuel, combustible, truly, to propel you forward in becoming more fully human and also enjoying, relishing the delight of being on this, as you say, this good earth, like
Yeah.
to and to have a body to experience it in.
As you were as you were writing, were there certain chapters that were really easy to get out and certain chapters that were more challenging or more work?
Sure. In the grief chapter for Samhain, I'm really looking at the shadow side. If winter solstice is the birth of the light and is the light joy piece. Then Samhain and that new year, that Celtic New Year, is sort of an ending point. And it's also for me a month or a time of year where I have many private anniversaries of the heart that are grief filled. Um, my brother's memorial was in October. Um, and so I really was holding that chapter with both hands as a way of taking care of myself, but also being open about what a healthy grief practice can look like. And also that it's not something to avoid or to try to go around, but to move through. And so there's just a lot of tools and suggestions and invitations and deep permissions about how to befriend grief.
Mm.
Actually, there's a card, one of my, on my alchemy deck is befriend grief. And I think about this idea of like you're in your solitude, you're in your grief, it's affecting your whole world. But like here it comes, and it's, maybe it's a sandhill crane that's like, hey, can I sit with you at the edge of this lake for a bit? And you have to kind of say yes to it and let it come work its dark magic.
Yeah, very much so. What I'm curious, which came first, or did they come in tandem, the book or the Oracle deck?
They came at the same time. So the book is a byproduct of a 1 year virtual journey I started with a community of makers and creators in 2020.
Mhm.
And so that's when I decided I would start the creative alchemy cycle as a year-long journey on Zoom during, in the depths of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so I did 8 cycles with a group over the course of the last 4 years with about 150 people, just cyclically. Like every 6 weeks, I would send out a digital package and it would have some prompts and we would meet and I would share like a story of the season. And I made some videos about me out in my landscape in Eastern Oregon, and we would make some things together and we would talk about how we're doing out there,
Mhm.
in
I
isolation.
remember I remember hearing about that through your mailing list, and I was like, "That sounds, delightful." It
It
was
was
also like a
delightful. We'd have
staple to participate
initially
in,
we
but I was
had
like,
like
"That's a great idea."
it was great. And it was a beautiful way for me to practice this in community before
Mm.
making a book. So the book is a byproduct of that e-course, basically that 1 year long cohort model e-course. And at the same time, I had a huge body of work, paintings. I'm a painter. I work in acrylics and I make a variety of sort of illustrative paintings. And I had over 100 paintings. And Anya Henkin, who is a really wonderful coach and facilitator in the Portland, Oregon area. She was saying, you don't have to make it new every time. You could use something you've already done and reframe it. And so I thought, well, gosh, I have all this sitting artwork that I own, I own the images. And so I made them into oracle cards. And with each one, I have a saying, it's embrace your growing edge or begin again. But these are all paintings that I had sitting. And so it was really a generative practice to make it into an oracle deck, which I've done root down. So it's really vibrant, beautiful artwork of my own. And they have these sort of mantras. People use them in a variety of ways. And I've just so enjoyed seeing them out in the world. And I made these in 2020 as I started this creative alchemy cycle process with this group of people who were mostly my newsletter subscribers and people who I thought were wonderful and I appreciated their work. And I said, hey, do you want to do this thing? And they said, yeah, let's do it. So that's how I made so that's the Creative Alchemy Oracle deck. And there are 63 cards. And I've used them for my own practice, but I have been so gratified to see them out in the world, all over the world.
I love that. How did you choose 63? Is that just how many happened to be? Oh, and I should also remind our live watchers that if you have questions for Sarah, please type them into the chat and I will feed them into the conversation.
Yeah, I think it was 63
why
cards
63
because
cards?
I self-published them and I had the choice I could either make like 57 cards or 63 cards or 78 cards. And I was like, oh, this is a good price point. I think it was a bunch of things that came into why, but I also love numbers that are divisible by 3.
There was part of me, I was like, so 6 and 3, they add up to 9. Nines are a good
A really beautiful
number, really beautiful, 3 to the third,
yeah, it scratched a bunch of itches, is what I'm saying.
I love it. And so one of the things that some of my other artist friends have done with their larger artwork is create postcards and things, but there will be one large painting, but then the close-ups of different areas in that painting. And so I'm curious, with your oracle cards, were they each their own painting, or are some of them
They're both.
part
Some
of
of
a
them
larger?
some of them are the full painting, but many of them are sort of honed in on a particular feature. Like one, here, I'll show you one this was, invite silence was a particular part of a painting. So is You Are Ready. I honed in on this woman. It's a much larger painting with a mountainscape behind it, and she's very small in the painting, but here she's the feature. So yeah, but then some were the whole painting, like this, Take the Leap is the entire thing.
So with the ones that are portions, can you put for anybody who purchases your oracle deck, and it has the same name, yes, the Creative
Alchemy Oracle deck and the Creative Alchemy Cycle, yes.
And all of those can be found on your website, sarahgreenman.com.
All of my artwork is in gallery forms. I paint in series. Is that a word? Yeah. In series. And so all of those galleries are available on my website. You can look at the full paintings. And then, of course, there's the shop where you can go look at the Oracle deck and make that purchase. And I'm an independent artist, so I self-publish those and ship them myself. My book is different. My book is published through Tehom Center Publishing, and it launched in late December, and so it's pretty new. But if you go to my website on the navigation bar and just press book, it'll take you to the book, and there's links there as well to the book.
and we'll make sure that all of the links get,
Yay. Yeah.
get down here also. And thank you
Yeah, they were both,
very
to
much.
your question, like the book and the cards birthed at the same time. The book just came out. It's harder to get published than it is to self-publish. And I wasn't sure when this, what route the book would take. And I just trusted the winds. And a
Mhm.
publisher came along last year, and I thought, this is the right way to go with these folks.
I love that. And I love that you are I love that you have ways to purchase directly from
Mhm.
you, from the publisher, that are easy, because I know a lot of people had or have Amazon habits that they are working on kicking. And on this channel, we have always only had bookshop
That's
links.
good.
And so I love that there is now more,
Yeah,
because the
we
one that
started
you're
on
reading is
Amazon.
different.
It's hard to publish without Amazon. They've really made it this sort of horrible Gordian knot of connectivity. But
Yeah.
my publisher just announced this week actually that there's a way to buy directly from the distributor. It helps that publishing company keep more of its own money, and that's a good thing
Yes.
overall. It's a woman Latina owned publishing company, and they publish queer and feminist authors with a real commitment to uplift BIPOC authors as well. So they're good people. So yeah, on my website, it's a direct purchase from the distributor now instead of Amazon, which makes me immeasurably happy. Yeah.
Woohoo. Um, oh, so for anybody who purchases your Oracle deck,
Yeah.
could we then, like, create some of the full paintings from
Oh no, they
the
don't go
cards?
together.
They don't go, okay. I
No.
one of
No.
no,
That would be
that's
cool.
okay.
It's
I was just curious,
like
because
puzzle and Oracle deck.
like Stranger Things, there's a I do no, it is not easily on hand. One of my favorite decks, tarot decks, is the Wise Fool Tarot by
Mm,
Kate Mura. And
yeah, so
what
good.
what that artist did was, around each card is a very specific type of border that's this really interesting marbled grays with some like yellowy undertones to it. And so the intention behind it was, when the cards are all put together, they make
Right. This fluid
full paint.
image. Yeah. Like a
Yeah,
storyline. So
yeah.
cool.
And so you with your artist self, I was curious if there were any little Easter eggs like
So
that in your
it's
Oracle deck.
definitely card by card for sure on this one. Yeah.
Yes. How do you we're winding down. Are there Okay, nothing so far in the chat. Um
Were you going to ask me how I use the cards?
I was.
Okay, yeah, I do a daily one card draw, just really about like what do I need to know about the day ahead, or the kind of energy I should be coming into the day with to help it be the kind of day it's supposed to be. So I use it that way. I also do three card draws pretty often. Um, and that's just a nice like temperature check for me. I have also used them in like a Celtic Cross tarot spread where I do the full, 10 cards.
Mhm.
Um, and I really enjoy that. I've also used them in tandem with tarot decks. And so if I'm doing a tarot reading, if I want to know more about the card, I'll do an oracle deck or an oracle card draw as well to be like, well, I want to know more about that. But so that's been a really fun way to use them. And then I use them as writing prompts when if I'm teaching, I'll
Yes.
I'll send them out to everybody and have them grab one and write for 5 minutes. I've also used them as I'm a facilitator, and I facilitate a lot of difficult conversations across difference and hold space for different organizations that are, trying to accomplish something together. So sometimes I'll use that as a sort of intuitive way of finding our way forward rather than a sort of right brain logical sort of way of
Yeah.
finding our way forward, just to sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
shake it up a little bit. Sometimes I like to take the etch a sketch and and so offering Oracle deck feels less difficult, I think, than a tarot deck for people who are not, in totally in that world. And so I think it's a really accessible way to tap our intuition.
I also, similarly, I love Oracle decks in those professional situations because there is also frequently, depending on the deck you're using, I
Mhm.
think your deck is an excellent example of this. No explicit religious
Yeah,
iconography
it's true.
because at least for myself when working with businesses, and I don't know what anybody's spiritual practices
Sure.
that
I
there
don't want to pretend to
are,
know either.
and I want to stay away from that because I don't want it to be triggering one way or another. And so I think your deck would is is perfect for that
Mm,
because it is
thanks.
the art, it is the imagery, it is the land.
It truly is. I mean, if everyone has a sense of like, we understand what trees are, we know we've all live around some kind of botanical structure. I mean, I do have some iconography that we are familiar with and that illuminates something or elicits a feeling inside of us. But I also have like babies, like yeah. Or like cooking, it's a very accessible deck. And so I appreciate these images. It's why I paint them. But I also have some, like really get out there and make you think about like what's our work, what's mine to do right now.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So what's mine to do right now is to make sure that everybody knows how to find you and know what you are up to next as
Yeah.
we wind this conversation down.
Everyone can find me at sarahgreenman.com. I also have a really fun to read newsletter. It's a love letter that comes out every, 2 to 4 weeks. And there's always prompts and invitations that are in that newsletter. I'll be doing a book tour in June for the Creative Alchemy Cycle. We'll be heading down the coast, sort of Washington, Oregon, California. And then we'll be heading out to Tucson, Albuquerque, probably Denver, Salt Lake City on our way back and some smaller bookstores in Oregon because I live in the state of Oregon. So yeah,
And will all of the different stops on your book tour be up on sarahgreenman.com?
as soon as I've got them all set, they sure will. And also in the newsletter, I'll be sending out to folks like come play. Here's where I'll be. I'd love to see you.
Perfect. I can
Yeah.
absolutely attest that Sarah's newsletter is fantastic. It is one of
Mm.
I subscribe to a lot of newsletters because it is good and helpful for people's numbers and validity of websites and like all of this back SEO stuff that I never thought I would ever learn about. Um,
Right.
like what I like being an actor and a tarot reader. Why am I learning SEO? Uh,
Same.
but your newsletter is one of the few that when it comes in, I actually fully read and I'm like, ooh, what do I get to play with this time? And I
Thank
love it.
you. I always want it to be something generative, something that feeds the soul and that is worth the time. I never want to, I think people's time and energy is the most precious gift they can give anybody. And so when
Mm,
someone gives it to me, I want to honor it and hold it with both hands and make it a gift, not a
mm,
burden.
indeed. Sarah, thank you so much
Thank you, Kate.
for uh, being part of season 2 of Conversations here. For folk who are looking to find other group tarot events, I will be presenting at Convocation in Michigan later on this month. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. So
I
cool.
I'm dusting off one of my favorite classes to teach on the grand emotions, and it's very different teaching the grand emotions, which are based out of Commedia dell'arte
Yep.
tradition for witches than for performers, and it is
That's
so
going to be awesome.
they're great. So for anyone who is in Michigan, please come check out Convocation. It is the largest and oldest pagan convention now in the US, Turtle Island, and the range of speakers and presenters is huge and phenomenal. Benabel Wen and Matt Oren are two of the headliners this year. And maybe one year you might want to
Yeah, I'm in.
join and present. Just
Little
tossing
seed
tossing
planted.
that out there,
Thank
tossing
you.
that out there as possibilities for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Is there anything that you would like to leave our watchers with?
Yeah, just thank you for sharing your gifts with your community. It's the most important thing you do. And I'm just really grateful that folks like you are out there doing your good and proper work in the world because we need you. We need us all, but we really need you.
Well, thank you. We need you.
Mm,
Mwah.
thank you, Kate.
And we need everybody here who is watching and listening.
Mm-hmm.
You,
Big time.
we need you. Have a beautiful day.